How's it going, and welcome to No Fun Alad's guide series on Candlekeep Mysteries, a 5th edition module. In today's video, we'll be covering the Scrivener's Tale, a 14th level adventure. Your players will be covered too, but before we go into anything major, I must warn you that there will be spoilers. So players, do not watch this, but DMs that want that added insight, go ahead and stick around because we have a lot to cover. And here it is, the Scrivener's Tale. A very unassuming book. However, the first time your players crack that thing open, they are going to soon discover that they are in a world of hurt. So with all of the other adventures, it gives you sort of prompt on how to potentially rope your players in, giving your players ideas on what kind of books they want to read. For this one, it doesn't give us that. For this one, your players accidentally read this book. So go ahead and give them whatever prompt you desire, and then eventually they're going to accidentally open up this book, and that is when the story is going to begin. Once your players read through this book, they'll actually uncover a quite little fantastical tale of the Fae, dealing with the Princess of Shadowglass and a court and other beings as they interact all throughout. This is a fascinating tale, and it's sort of a prelude to what's to come. But, of course, there is some discrepancies in the story. But the story of the book isn't really the main concern of the players. The real main concern, as once they read a few lines, then all of a sudden, magical text will start appearing on their skin. Exactly 20% of their skin will now be covered in this little script. Now from then on, every 3 days, your players must make a saving throw of a DC 20 Charisma, and if they fail, another 20% of their body is covered by these magical tattoos. It doesn't actually go into what exactly the text is for the lettering. It is written in Elvish, so of course many people could read it. What I would go ahead and say is that it's simply just random lines from the book, and they have absolutely no pertaining meaning at all whatsoever. Of course, there is a lot of fun things you could do if you did want it to mean something. You could definitely have it where written on someone's body there is a script that is incomplete, and eventually over time, as more of the tattoo starts revealing itself, it could potentially lead to some fun clues, but they will not discover the full text of it until the end. So with a DC of 20 Charisma saving throw, more than likely, the majority of people are actually just going to flat out fail every single time. Yes, some people have a much better chance of this. This is a higher level adventure, so people do have good saving throws, but only if you're proficient in it and if you're hanging around the paladin the whole time. More than likely, a lot of people are just going to flat out fail, which means this adventure essentially is on a timer. What I'm going to tell you is, it is fun that they have the rule of 3 in here, which is closely associated with the Fae. What I would tell you is, if you're more hand-waving this adventure, if this is a one-shot or a mini-shot where you don't want to keep track of the particulars, what I would say is have the effect rolled at certain particular times, and I'll be covering those throughout the course of this adventure. So right from the get-go, your players are automatically infected with level 1. They gain the ability to speak, read, and write Sylvan, and magic cannot put them to sleep. However, they can no longer cast a shadow. So that should become immediately present once they're in Candlekeep. There should be some torches or some lights nearby, and that is immediately told to the players. However, once they start getting more infected, there is some things that they may not immediately know. Such as, for the second level, yeah, they immediately begin to be able to use the message cantrip. However, magic potions no longer affect you. Do you tell your players that? That's something that really comes down to your style of DMing. Some people are okay with just flat out saying, oh, you have this detriment, and some people only have that detriment show up if it actually occurs. The third one is you gain the ability to cast all these fun spells with the DC of 15. However, the drawback, you can't attune or be attuned to magical items. That is a tremendous deal. At level 14, it is more than likely that your players all have 1, 2, maybe even 3 attuned items. And if they don't have access to those magical items, their potential power is very limited. You know, that is something that is going to peeve some people, but that's probably going to definitely surge the urgency for your players to continue on and find the cure to this disease. For level 4, you cease to age naturally, and magically aging no longer affects you. The drawback is you become brittle as glass. You now have vulnerability to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, and effects that grant you resistance or immunity to such damage are suppressed, which more than likely no one's going to have because at that point no one's attuned to any magical items, right? So that is a huge deal once again. If your players are going up against anything that does bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage, and they are taking that damage, that's double the damage. Huge stuff. And last but certainly not least, we have level 5. There is no benefit. The drawback, you become petrified. So that right there is telling us we only have a few days to figure out what the heck's going on here. So what is going on here? Your players are being infected by the Shadow Glass Princess herself. So the previous person that was in control of this book was able to get rid of this curse at the low cost of paying someone for a wish spell. Something that your players will probably not have access to. In fact, they should not have access to it. Otherwise, if they are able to get rid of it, then that kind of defeats the purpose of this adventure. Your players should be going out and trying to figure out what's going on and be able to overcome all of this terrible nonsense. So the Avowed, who accidentally give your players this book, A1 Ramelier, is going to say, oh my goodness, I am so sorry. I'm going to go ahead and talk to the Great Reader, and hopefully the Great Reader can set you up. I am so incredibly sorry. And it's pretty sad, right? There's this middle-aged guy, hardworking, and he made a simple little mistake, and it now could potentially cost the lives of high-level adventurers. You know, he's probably feeling pretty bad about it. Once your players talk to the Great Leader, Talos Avost, Avost is going to say, hey, sorry, we really can't do anything about it. You can talk to the previous owner of this book, the one that donated it, A1 Makil Rilin. But, of course, your players aren't going to get too much information. If your players do have some sort of way to get more information, such as Commune, Divination, Legend Lore, then there is a nice little list here on some bonus information that they can learn here, which is a great thing. Your players are rewarded by getting all of this great information. But, of course, your players are probably going to have to spend time and or money on that, and that is something that they may be lacking in. So during the first day, after getting all these tattoos and trying to figure out what's going on here, that night, or whenever it is that they decide to go to sleep, everybody's going to have the same dream. We get this nice little text blurb on what all of them are going to basically envision, and that is when the Princess of Shadowglass is going to periodically check in on the party and try and steer them in the right direction. Now, throughout the course of this adventure, what I would advise is the Princess of Shadowglass is constantly saying, oh, help me out, I'm stuck, you're the only ones that can help me. Try and have her seem appealing to the party. But, of course, everyone knows the expectations of if something's trying to get released, then it's probably bad news. If you have players that know those expectations, you can play into those, no problem, or you could choose to subvert those expectations by saying, oh, you know, this person is definitely forthcoming and they promise to do good things, blah, 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 this and that. So during the course of adventure here, your players going to Baldur's Gate and then eventually to the ruins, your players can potentially be harassed by agents of the enemy of the Shadowglass Princess. The Queen of Air and Darkness is going to dispatch agents to attack the party, and these agents are bad news bears. We have Fomorians attached with Wood Elf Wizards, and then we also have other such agents like Archmages, Death's Lad, Vampires, Assassins, Green Dragon. We get all of these things attacking the party. And what I'm going to tell you is, if you're running a one-shot, you do not have time for this. I'm going to tell you right now. If you are running a one-shot, this is not going to fit. But if you are running a series of adventures and you're okay with it, then absolutely you can fit all these right in. What I'm going to tell you is, running this as a one-shot, those last two combats are going to take up so much time, you don't have time for much else. Now, should you choose to run all of these fun combats, of course they are a blast. They're going to shake up the travel. They can happen not only during the journey between all the cities, but they can also happen in the city themselves. And that's really bad. If you're in a crowded city and then Fomorians start popping up, or assassins are striking in the middle of the night, you know, all those things are a big deal. Your players can potentially learn a great deal about what's going on here if they capture and interrogate all of these enemies. They could potentially see that they are working for bad, or maybe they can come to their own conclusions and think that these people are really bad and it's a good idea to release the Shadowglass Princess. Whatever the case may be, your players are probably going to think that they're onto something and need to continue further on. And of course, to further solidify the fact that your players may be working for the air quote good guy here, your players will be told by the voice in their heads saying, hey, all those people attacking you, free me and I'll deal with it. And if that isn't incentive enough, then there is also the Charm of the Shadowglass here. Your players can cast Shatter at DC 16. As an action, no components required. Once they finish short or long rest, they gain temp HP equal to double their proficiency bonus. which at this level is barely anything, but hey, it's something. Your players travel to Baldur's Gate to talk to the Rillian house. And as mentioned before, if you are not keeping a strict time record, this is definitely where I would have one of the first rolls for the curse progression table. Once your players are let in, they can talk to Evandre Rillian, who is the last member of the Rillian house here, because the person that turned in that book oh so long ago died. Funnily enough, not from the curse itself because they had the wish removed, but he actually got killed by the very same agents that your players may be harassed by. Evandre is not going to take any crap from the players, but if the players are forthcoming, then she will reveal everything she knows, and with a bit of roleplay and a persuasion check, Evandre can show off some of Mikhail's possessions. Your players can root through, and they will actually learn a tremendous amount of detail here. This information you can just easily show off to the players is absolutely astounding. Your players are going to inform more and more about what's going on here, and once again, they can make their own assumptions. Now, hopefully your players are on the up and up, but if you have people that are crass, if you have people that are evil, if you have people that are stealing, assaulting, burning down the house, whatever the case may be, if anybody commits a crime against House Rillian, then they make a terrible enemy. As 4d12 hours later, one of Evandre's allies, an adult copper dragon named Hastal Galir, demands gold from the party to pay for the Raise Dead spells. That is a big deal because if your players are getting harassed constantly, or if they have to deal with an adult dragon, they're probably going to lose out on a lot of gold. And of course, there's a lot of fun things to be had with that. Between Evandre's information and the information that they can glean from all of the items there, they can discover that they need to go to a set of ruins. And in that set of ruins is where they're going to find a way to hopefully get rid of the curse. Make sure that when your players arrive to this location, give them this art piece because that's going to really set the tone here that this is something deep beneath the earth and hasn't been touched in quite some time. If you are running the curse progression as more of an encounter based, I would say as they descend down the steps, that's when you have them roll again. So if you have people that are unlucky, then they will now be at level 3 once they reach the bottom of the steps. Now, once your players arrive here, in addition to everything that they've been whispered about, trying to free the Princess of Shadowglass, now she's going to urge the players to kill Zirian the Ghost. She's going to plead with them, saying such things as, destroy the Scriviner, and I will rid you of this evil mark. The only way this ends well is by us saving each other. She's going to do everything and say everything she can in the books to try and get the party to deal with it. But if your party is on the up and up and they know what's going on, they're probably not going to attack. And now it's here in this dungeon where the resources are going to start stacking up. In Area 1, we have the deep stairwell. Once your players reach near the bottom, you're going to have all of them roll dexterity saving throws. And if they fail, then they fall, taking 4d6 points of bludgeoning damage. Pretty gnarly stuff. That is going to add up over time because they are going to be in for a lot of fights in a relatively short amount of time. In Area 2, we have the collapsing room. Your players want to push further on ahead, and they're going to need to get past this rubble. If there's someone small, they can try and squeeze by with a DC 20 dex check, but more than likely, people are going to have to use some sort of physical force or magic to get past. If they are using brute force, then this is going to be DC 15 athletics checks, and if they fail, then they suffer 2d6 points of bludgeoning damage as rubble continues to pile on them. However, after 3 successful checks, the archway is cleared. In Area 3, we have the central chamber. A very unique and very glossed over portion of this area is that in that blurb text that you tell your players, though a layer of debris and dead insects coats the floor of this area, its contents remain largely intact. There's a ton of bugs here. It's kind of creepy. Your players are going to be questioning what the heck is going on, and they'll be curious. They're really not going to find any true answer, but of course it's just going to add to the tension of the creepiness around here. In Area 4, we have the reading room. This is before, of course, the library. Once your players make their way inside of here, then they're going to see that there's a door that leads further in, but it is locked. If they try and bust down the door, try to open it, try to do anything, that is when Zirian is going to appear. Zirian is going to act completely nonchalant, going to not really pay attention or notice what's going on here. But once your players actually get to talking to Zirian, Zirian can reveal all of this excellent information about how he got screwed, about how the Princess of Shadowglass sucks, and how your players can potentially try and deal with it. So going down the good guy route, if your players talk with Zirian, they can get the good ending to the scenario. But if your players are absolutely enamored with the Shadow Glass Princess and attack Zirian, then he is just simply going to disappear for a whole 24 hours. And unfortunately for them, they're going to fall right into the Shadow Glass Princess's trap. So if your players talk to Zirian or eventually they just hit the door, that is when they're going to discover the key to opening up this area. There's actually 3 keys, and they are located in 3 stone golems, which are going to emerge. Once your players are ready, cue the Doom music, as they are going to get into a wave combat scenario. This is pretty dope. 3 stone golems are going to eventually emerge to attack the party. However, this is not all at once. When the fight starts, 2 mummies per PC are going to emerge from the walls and attack the party. Once half of those mummies are destroyed, then the first stone golem is going to appear. Once your players then finish off the first stone golem, that is when the second stone golem is going to appear, as well as 1 mummy per PC. 1 round after that, another golem is going to appear, as well as 2 mummies per player character. So this is a fun, unique wave attack that your players are going to be dealing with, and this is a good way to burn resources. This is a high level adventure. Your players are level 14, so this is absolutely incredible. They're going to be taking out mummies in a single turn, no issue. The stone golems may take a bit more in regards of action economy to deal with, but your players realistically should have a good time with this. The mummies aren't exactly hitting too hard. The mummy rot is actually pretty bad if it actually does connect, but mummies aren't exactly the scariest thing. So if your players don't exactly know what's going on here, I would completely describe that the stone golems, as they emerge, the stone golems have a clear transparent key right in their chest, and they have to destroy the golems in order to get the keys. Of course, if you want to be completely lenient, then you could say that there's some fun elaborate way that your players could go up to the stone golems, steal the key right out, and make their way to the door. But I imagine that most people are probably just going to use good old shotgun diplomacy. Once your players have dealt with all the stone golems, then all of the other mummies are going to disappear and fall back into stasis. So your players can just snipe the big bads and get rid of all the trash mobs. Once your players have all 3 keys, that is when they can open the door to Area 8. But before then, we have a few other areas to go over. Also, another fun thing to note is located in Area 4, if your players make a DC 15 investigation check, they could find a spell scroll of Conjure Fey, which that could be actually pretty useful. In Area 5, we have the Dragon Fresco. This room is essentially one big troll, as your players can look around and they can see that there's a fresco of a dragon and one of a wizard. They can see that the Dragon Fresco has something that appears to be missing from it, but they can see that the fresco with the wizard in it is holding a wand, but the wand looks like it could be moved. So naturally people are going to say, oh, let's move the wand over there. If they take that wand, then lo and behold, whoever takes that wand is going to get struck by a chain lightning, and that really sucks because if anyone else is standing around, they get hit by the chain lightning as well. To add insult to injury, this is not a special wand, it's pretty much nothing. Your players then take that wand and put it into the Dragon Fresco, and when they do, they'll hear an audible click, and they will see an adult black dragon emerge from the stone, who will just simply look at the party and say, "Get out of my way, I'm getting out of here." And if your players do not get out of the way, then a combat's going to ensue. And this is really bad because if they're dealing with a whole bunch of crazy shenanigans, then this is just going to be another resource drain. Fun to note in here is if your players start searching around the place, then they can find a potion of fire giant strength and a robe of eyes. Here's the issue. More than likely, a lot of people actually can't drink potions anymore. And there will actually, at this point, be a bunch of people who can't even attune to items. So those items will probably have to be used for a later date. In Area 6, we have the bunk room. This place doesn't have anything fancy going on, except for the fact that there is slippery mold on the ground. And anybody that walks around in here has to make a DC 15 dexterity saving throw or fall prone if they are not moving slow enough. The cool thing to note here is that the stone golems automatically succeed on this. So if your players do rush in here during a combat, they're going to have to worry about that. But I suspect that a lot of people during that wave assault combat, I imagine a lot of people are just going to be camping in a corner. In Area 7, we have a deep spring. We can see that this deep spring probably is an intended portion of the haven, but this could be used as a sort of funnel. This could be used as a number of different things. And if your players start searching around, they can actually find a horn worth 500 GP from a fallen adventurer who got smitten by, presumably, all of the nasty crawlies around here. In Area 8, we have the Great Library. If you're going by a milestone for the curses, I would say that this is another great time to make them roll as soon as they walk through, as they look around and they can see the opulence of this great library. As a friendly reminder, if they had failed all of their saving throws at this point, then they are now at level 4, meaning that this is really bad because now they are one step closer to becoming petrified. In this great library, your players will be able to see a myriad of thousands and thousands of books, all of which are still intact and still usable. What's also really cool to note here is that there's panes of smoked shadow glass all around, and that's going to contribute during the fight, because once your players summon forth the Princess of Shadow Glass to finally banish her or to free her, that is when the real nasty stuff is going to ensue. So what's really fun to note here is if your players are absolutely adamant in not talking to Zirian, if your players spend an hour looking around in here, then they actually will discover the process for summoning and destroying Nintra. But of course, you can just shove Zirian giving that exposition down the players' throats. Your players must conduct a ritual to summon Nintra, the Shadow Glass Princess. Once they do, she will be summoned, and a great combat will ensue. So what's cool to note here is your players may think to themselves, oh, let's totally get the jump on her. But no matter what, if they express their intentions, then Nintra is going to automatically know because she has that mental connection to the party. As a bonus action in the first round of combat, Nintra summons 6 Shadow Glass Warriors, and these are gladiators. And that's a huge deal because these things have bludgeoning and piercing damage, and guess what? At this point, the majority of people now have vulnerability to those damage types, so they're going to be coming in with double damage. So if your players come into this and they are looking to destroy the Shadow Glass Princess, then perfect combat's going to ensue. There is the very small chance that everyone is on board and says, oh, we're going to free her. In which case, there is no combat, right? She's going to say, thank you all for your hard work. I'm going to go do my own thing. Screw you all. And that could just be that simple. The party may or may not be shown leniency. And if they are shown leniency, then they get to live. But if they are not shown leniency, then they automatically die. So why did I suggest that they go into this fight with level 4 of this curse? Well, that is because during this fight, all of these gladiators are going to rush in and make the combat a chaotic mess. Nintra's going to be doing her own thing. But if Nintra so chose, she could, as an action, point to anybody, and they must make a DC 20 charisma saving throw. And on a failed saving throw, that is when they gain one more level of the curse. And that's a big deal because if they are level 4, then bam, they get petrified right then and there. And of course, if you're running a crazy, deadly combat encounter, then people are going to be extremely freaked out by this, right? So Nintra has a really fun stat block here. 306 HP, so she is going to take several rounds to knock down. She does have legendary resistances. She's got several fun legendary actions. She's got these attacks. She can adjust to a lot of situations. If there's a whole bunch of melee people, then bam, she just claws them down. If a whole bunch of ranged people, bam, she hits them with the Shard of Shadows. And those Shard of Shadows are big because if she starts poisoning people and now everyone's going to be having disadvantage on everything, huge deal, right? But of course, the real big deal here is the fact that most people are going to have vulnerability to a whole bunch of damage types. And that claw coming in right there, it's normally 12, but guess what? It's probably going to be 24 now. That Storm of Shattered Glass, that is huge damage coming in. And of course, Nintra can be moving around the battlefield using that phase step, using those shadow strikes, and she's also got some fun spells she could use. More than likely, I'm going to say that these spells are pretty much not going to matter. The Fairy Fire and the Dispel Magic. The Mirror Image could potentially be useful, but probably not. It's probably more than likely she's just going to attack and use an action to, in fact, try to get someone to that level 5 of the curse. In addition to all of the gladiators and Nintra herself and her legendary actions, her actions, she's also got layer actions too. And this is actually good. It may seem like a lot, but that's because level 14 characters are ridiculous and they need this sort of challenge in order to be challenged. So I think this combat is perfectly fine, fair, and most important of all, dynamic and fun. When I ran this, unfortunately, one of the characters got petrified into glass and summariously destroyed, but I always have backup characters when I'm running one-shots, and I gave it right to that person so they could immediately get right back into the fight. and the combat just ensued. It was crazy chaotic. People were just doing things all over the place. People were afraid. People were moving all over. You know, it was just a fun time. But eventually, they were able to lay the smackdown on the Princess of Shadowglass herself. Once your players have dealt the finishing blow to Nintra, then they just need to snuff out the candles, and boom, she is shattered. And of course, all of her machinations will be shattered as well. All of the Shadowglass warriors still there, and all of the curse marks on the players will recede. If your players do not complete this ritual, then she will come back in an hour's time. So hopefully, if you divulged all the information about, hey, you need to destroy her in this manner, and they just beat her up and don't think to actually use the ritual, then of course she can be a fun recurring villain later on. Once your players finally get some breathing room and are able to finally relax, that is when they can start searching around for all the goodies, and here they can find an Ioun Stone of Awareness, pretty cool, but it's also very big haul here is the books themselves. This library hasn't been touched in ages, and this library is worth 50,000 gold in total. Hopefully someone brought the bag of holding, because this is going to take a long time to recover. Once your players have dealt with Nintra, Zirian the Ghost can wave goodbye and thank the party profusely. What's also really cool to note here is eventually, if your players come out of the place and start hauling out a bunch of loot, then word is going to spread that adventurers came into these ruins, and that may set up some fun future adventures. In fact, the whole conclusion here is pretty much just about future adventures. We have the favor of the Gloaming Court. Your players have now, because they've dealt with the Princess of Shadowglass, earned favor with the Queen of Air and Darkness, and that's huge. They can have an unpredictable ally or patron later on, and that leads to fun Fae adventures and a whole bunch of crazy zany wackiness. We also have the fact that we have all these books. Your players could just grab all the books and sell them, but your players could grab some decent ones and donate them to Candlekeep. They may donate the whole thing. They can do a number of things, and they can, of course, make great friends with people in Candlekeep. And if your players were mean to the Rillian house, then they've now earned the ire of the Copper Dragon, and your players could have also released a Black Dragon, and that could lead to a whole bunch of craziness later on, because that Black Dragon is going to take over Daggerford, and your party should hopefully try and do something about it. This adventure is an absolute blast. There's a ton of fun themes you get to work with here, because Fae is awesome, and of course the creepiness of a curse that is literally growing on your body, and all of the fun combats that you can have here that are dynamic, and all the NPCs that you meet along the way. Absolutely fantastic stuff. The end battle is absolutely fun and dynamic, and of course before then we also have the wave combat as well, which is also unique. There's just a lot of great things working for this adventure, and I cannot recommend it enough. When I ran it, I had an absolute blast, all the players had a blast, and I know you are going to have a blast when you run this as well. So go ahead and tell me, are you going to have a curse roll every 3 days? Or are you going to set it up just like a milestone like I mentioned? Are your players going to get jumped by the agents of the Queen of Air and Darkness? Or are you going to skip over that and get to the Haven? And how many ramifications are your players going to end up with after this adventure is said and done? Go ahead and tell me all those things, because I want to know. But that's going to do it for me. Thank you for watching. Thanks for listening. And thank you to my amazing patrons. And I cannot wait to see you all in the next one.